My sister called me on a Tuesday night, crying so hard I could barely understand her. I was standing in the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta that had already gone soft, and my husband was in the living room watching football. When I heard her voice, I turned the burner off and walked into the hallway. I didn't know why. Instinct, maybe. "He left," she said. He packed a bag and left. I don't know what to do. My sister. I'll call her my little sister, because that's how I still think of her, even though she's 29, had been married for 3 years, to a man none of us ever fully trusted. He had a way of making you feel like you were wrong about him, before you'd even said anything out loud. The marriage had been rocky for a while, I knew that, but hearing her sob into the phone at 10 o'clock on a random Tuesday made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Okay," I said. "Okay. Do you need me to come?" She lived 40 minutes away. I could be there in 40 minutes. No, I don't want to bother you. You're not bothering me. Do you want to come here? You can stay with us. The words came out naturally. Of course they did. She was my sister. She had nowhere to go. They'd been renting his family's property, which meant the apartment was tied to his name, his family, his people. She couldn't stay there. Our parents were in Florida now, retired, not a place she could reach on a Tuesday night with a garbage bag of clothes and a broken heart. We had a spare room. The answer was obvious to me. I told her to come. I hung up, walked back into the living room, and told my husband. He muted the TV. "For how long?" he said. "I don't know. She just found out tonight. Her husband left her." "How long is she going to stay here?" I looked at him for a moment. "I don't know," I said again. "She just found out tonight." He unmuted the TV. That should have been the moment I paid closer attention. But I told myself he was just surprised, that he'd process it, that by the time my sister arrived, he'd be decent about it. My husband, Marcus, had always been polite to my sister, polite in the way some people are, polite to people they're vaguely inconvenienced by, but can't say so out loud. I'd filed that away somewhere, and tried not to look at it too directly. My sister arrived around 11. She had a tote bag and a duffel and mascara tracked down her face, and she stood at the front door like she wasn't sure she was allowed in. I hugged her and brought her inside and made her tea and sat with her at the kitchen table until almost 1 in the morning while she told me everything. Marcus went to bed at 11:15. He didn't come say good night to her. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just disappeared down the hallway, and I heard the bedroom door click shut, and I kept my eyes on my sister and kept my voice warm and pretended I hadn't noticed. She stayed for 8 days. In those 8 days, Marcus said maybe a dozen words to her directly. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't rude in any way I could point to and say, "Look, this is what he did." He was just absent in a way that made her feel like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. He started eating dinner in the living room instead of at the table with us. He sighed when she was in the bathroom too long in the morning. One night I came to bed late and he rolled over and said, very quietly, "I need my home back." "She's going through the worst thing that's ever happened to her," I said. "I know," he said, "but it's been a week." She left after 8 days because she found a short-term sublease through a friend from work. She hugged me at the door and whispered, "Thank you," and I could hear underneath it something else. An apology for existing, almost, for needing something. It made my chest hurt. I closed the door and Marcus said, "Finally," from the kitchen. I didn't say anything. I went and took a shower and stood under the water a long time. I thought, okay. This is a hard thing for him. He's a private person. He likes his space. I made allowances for it. I moved on. 9 months later, his mother called. His mother? She and I have never had a bad word between us, technically. She's the type of woman who compliments you in a way that sounds like a correction. "Oh, you did your hair differently," means she liked it better before. "This is so cozy," means the house is small. You learn to translate after a while. I've been translating for 4 years. She called Marcus, not me, which was normal. She always called Marcus. He came into the kitchen while I was unloading groceries, and he said, "My mom wants to come visit for the holidays." "Sure," I said. "Thanksgiving or Christmas?" "Both," he said. I stopped with a box of cereal in my hand. "Both," I repeated. "She's been having a hard time since my dad's back surgery. She doesn't want to be alone through the holidays. I thought she could just stay with us." From when to when? Like the week of Thanksgiving through New Year's. I did the math. That was 6 weeks. Marcus. She's my mother. I know she's your mother. 6 weeks is. That's a long time. It's the holidays. You don't tell your mother she can't come for the holidays. I thought about my sister standing at my front door with a duffel bag and mascara on her cheeks. I thought about a week feeling like an imposition. My sister stayed 8 days and you said you needed your home back, I said. That was completely different. How? He looked at me like I'd said something slightly unhinged. That was an emergency situation. This is my mother. My father just had surgery. She needs support. My sister was going through a divorce. It's different, he said, and his voice dropped in that particular way it did when he wanted to signal that the conversation was over. She's older. It's the holidays. I'm not going to tell her no. I stood there holding the cereal box, and I looked at my husband, and I thought, not for the first time, but maybe for the first time this clearly, that he genuinely did not see it. The unevenness, the way one woman in crisis warranted sighs and separate dinners, and finally, another woman got 6 weeks without a question. I said, okay, and I meant it the way you mean things when you're not ready yet to mean the other thing. She arrived the Saturday before Thanksgiving with 2 hard-shell suitcases, a carry-on, and a shopping bag of supplements and vitamins she said she needed refrigerated. Marcus carried everything in. He was cheerful in a way I hadn't seen in months. He showed her to the guest room, the same guest room my sister had slept in, and said we'd redone it a little, which was not true, and she said it was lovely. That first night he cooked. He actually cooked, pasta from scratch, the kind he made when we were dating and wanted to impress. His mother sat at the kitchen island and a stool, and they talked for 3 hours while I cleaned up and then sat on the couch in the living room, separate, listening to them laugh. I told myself I was being petty. I tried to shake it off. By day 3, I understood the shape of how this was going to go. She and Marcus had a rhythm. He'd make coffee in the morning and bring it to her room before he left for work. In the evenings they watched the shows she liked. She had opinions about how things should be done. The dishwasher, loaded a specific way, the throw blankets folded and not just piled, the kitchen counter clear before bed, and Marcus adopted all of these opinions instantly, cheerfully, like they'd always been his too. And suddenly I was the one doing things wrong in my own home. One afternoon she came into the kitchen while I was cooking and stood for a moment watching me, and then said, "You know, you'll get a better sear if you let the pan heat longer before you add the meat." I had not asked. I smiled and said thank you. She watched for another moment, and then drifted back out. That evening I overheard her tell Marcus that I seemed stressed and that maybe I was taking on too much. He agreed. That night, in bed, I lay staring at the ceiling. He was already asleep, the easy sleep of someone who feels settled. I thought about my sister. I thought about how she texted me a few weeks ago that she was doing better, that she'd started therapy, that the sublease apartment was small but felt like hers. I'd been so relieved for her. I thought about how she'd asked, tentatively, in that text, "Is everything okay with you?" I'd said, "Yes, great. Things are good." The week after Thanksgiving, I called in sick one day and just drove. I drove to the lake 45 minutes north and sat in the car in the parking lot and let myself actually think for the first time in weeks. What I kept coming back to wasn't even the big things. It wasn't the dishwasher or the pan or being talked about in my own kitchen. It was the 8 days. 6 weeks. Finally. Coffee delivered to a room every morning. That math wouldn't leave me alone. And underneath the math was something else. A recognition that I had contorted myself, again and again, into someone who needed nothing, who was bothered by nothing, who took up no space, because somewhere along the way I had learned that his comfort was the thing that kept the peace, and keeping the peace was my job, and I had accepted that job description without ever being handed a contract. I sat in that parking lot for almost 2 hours. On the way home, I stopped and had lunch by myself at a diner I'd never been to. I ordered a burger and coffee and sat by the window and ate slowly. The waitress refilled my mug without being asked, and I thought, I can't remember the last time someone did something small for me without me asking. That's a strange thing to notice, but I noticed it. When I got home, his mother was in my kitchen baking cookies with Marcus, and they were laughing, and the whole house smelled like butter and brown sugar, and Marcus looked up when I came in and said, "Where were you?" Not worried. Annoyed slightly. "Running errands," I said. I went to the bedroom and started thinking in a different way. Christmas was the last week of her stay. By then we were 4 weeks in, and I had quietly, methodically done several things. I had opened a checking account in my name only, at a bank Marcus didn't use. I moved 3 months of expenses into it. I had my own income from my job in healthcare administration, had always had it, had always deposited it into our joint account out of a habit that I now understood differently. I did not touch the joint account. I just made sure that if I needed to move, I could move. I had texted my best friend, someone I've known since college, someone who knows how to keep a confidence, and told her some of what was going on. Not all of it. Enough. She said, "You know you can come here any time." She lives 2 hours away. I saved that sentence the way you save something you don't want to need. I had looked up our lease. We rented, jointly, both names. I wasn't planning to leave. I want to be clear about that. Or maybe I wasn't planning not to. I was just getting clear. The way you get clear when you've spent a long time being foggy. "Christmas Eve," his mother asked me, in front of Marcus, why I didn't come to church with them. I said I didn't really practice. She looked at Marcus. He looked at the table. She said, "I suppose that's a personal choice," and then moved on to talking about what his cousin had named her baby. Christmas morning, Marcus gave me a gift card to a spa. He gave his mother an envelope. Inside was a week's stay at a beach cottage in the Outer Banks, just for her, in February, a trip he'd apparently been planning for months. She cried. He hugged her. I sat on the couch with my gift card and thought about nothing at all, which was the safest thing I could do with what I was feeling. That afternoon, I called my sister. She picked up on the second ring. She sounded warm, solid, like herself again. "How are you doing?" she asked. "How's the visit going?" I thought about what I always said. "Fine, good, great." Instead, I said, "I think I'm realizing some things." She was quiet for a second. "Okay," she said, "tell me." So I did. Not everything, not all at once, but enough. I told her about the 8 days and the finally, and the 6 weeks and the coffee and the spa gift card. I told her about the parking lot at the lake. She listened without interrupting, which is the hardest thing to do when someone you love is telling you something that makes you angry on their behalf. When I finished, she said, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I said. "Okay," she said, "but whatever it is, I've got a couch that's yours." I laughed, and crying at the same time, a little. His mother left 3 days after Christmas on a Thursday. Marcus drove her to the airport and texted me from there, "Flight on time. Be home by noon." I looked at that text. I had been sitting at the kitchen table for an hour, coffee going cold, just sitting. When he came home, he seemed lighter, relieved the way he always felt after something was finally finished. He came in, put his keys down, and said, "I'm glad that worked out. I think she had a good time." "Good," I said. He looked at me. Something in my face must have been different. "You okay?" I set down my mug. "Do you remember when my sister stayed here?" I said. "After her husband left?" He nodded. "A little wary now." "She was here 8 days, I said. "You came to me on night 7 and said you needed your home back. You sighed when she was in the bathroom. You ate dinner in the other room, and the morning she left, you said, 'Finally.'" He opened his mouth. "I'm not asking you to defend it," I said. "I just need you to know that I remember it. I remember it exactly." He was quiet. "Your mother was here 6 weeks, I said. You made her coffee every morning. You planned a vacation for her in February. You cooked from scratch the first night, and not once, not one time, did you ask me if I was okay with any of it. You told me, and when I said 6 weeks was a long time, you said it was different." "It is different. I know you believe that," I said. "I know you believe it completely. That's actually the part I keep thinking about." I stood up and picked up my mug and took it to the sink. "I'm not leaving," I said, because I wanted to be honest. "But I'm not going to keep pretending the math adds up either. And I think we need to actually talk about this with someone, a counselor, because I have been making myself small in this house for a long time, and I can't do it anymore." He stood in the kitchen doorway for a long moment. "I didn't know you felt that way," he finally said. "I know," I said. "That's also something we need to talk about. I'm not going to tell you we fixed it overnight. We didn't. The first therapy session was the most uncomfortable hour of my life. Sitting across from a stranger and saying the true thing out loud, watching my husband hear it for the first time in a way that didn't let him change the subject. He was defensive at first. Then he was quiet. Then, on the drive home, he said something that surprised me. He said, "I didn't realize I did that." "Which part?" I said. "Any of it," he said. "The all of it." I looked out the window. "I know," I said for the second time, and this time it didn't feel sad when I said it. It felt like a starting point. My sister is doing well. She got her own apartment, a real one, signed a lease in her name. She sent me a photo of her living room when she finished setting it up. Everything hers, chosen by her, arranged the way she wanted, and I stared at that photo for a long time. We're still in counseling. Some weeks it's hard, and some weeks something shifts. I keep the separate checking account, not because I'm planning anything, but because I learned something in that parking lot by the lake, something I don't want to forget. Knowing you have somewhere to go changes the way you stand in a room. It makes you take up space differently. More honestly. I think about that woman I was the night my sister called, standing in the kitchen, stirring soft pasta, walking into the hallway on instinct. Something in me already knew, even then, that the answer to my sister's question, "Do you need anything, can you come?" had to be yes, without conditions, without math. Because that's what it means to love someone. I'm still figuring out how to ask for the same thing in return. But I'm asking. I used to think that keeping the peace was the same thing as having peace. It isn't. I know that now in a way I didn't before. Not intellectually, but in the body. The way you know something after you've lived it rather than just thought about it. What happened in my marriage didn't start with 6 weeks or 8 days. It started much earlier. In all the small moments, I chose to say nothing. Every time I told myself he was just private, just tired, just adjusting, I was making a choice. I was choosing his comfort over my own honesty. And choices like that compound. They build something over time, quietly, the way water shapes stone. You don't notice the stone changing until one day you reach for it and it crumbles in your hand. That's what the parking lot at the lake was for me. The moment I finally reached for it. What I kept circling back to wasn't anger exactly. It was recognition. I recognized that I had been the one doing the math all along, counting days, measuring responses, converting my sister's 8 days against his mother's 6 weeks. And I had been doing it silently, alone, because somewhere I had decided that saying it out loud would cost too much. That is not wisdom, that is fear dressed up as patience. There was a difference, and I wish I had understood it sooner. The hard thing about cause and effect in a relationship is that it rarely looks clean. It's not one bad moment that breaks something. It's the accumulation of every time you swallowed the true thing and said "okay" instead. Marcus wasn't a villain. He was someone who had never been asked to see the unevenness, because I had never made him look at it directly. That is on him, yes, but some of it is on me too, and I think owning that part is what made the conversation in the kitchen actually land. I wasn't just pointing at him, I was also accounting for myself. Courage, I've come to think, isn't the loud thing. It's not the dramatic exit or the perfect speech. It's sitting down at a kitchen table and saying the true thing to someone who might not want to hear it, and saying it anyway, not because you're sure of the outcome, but because you've gotten clear enough to know you can't keep not saying it. And intelligence, real intelligence, the kind that matters in a life, is knowing the difference between what you can change and what you've been trying to pretend isn't there. I spent years being smart about everything except the thing that was quietly costing me the most. My sister is doing well now. She built something that belongs entirely to her. She did it because she had to, and then she found out that having to wasn't the worst thing. That on the other side of necessity is sometimes a version of yourself you wouldn't have met any other way. I'm still meeting mine.